Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Father Stephen Imbarrato. Let's go to Florida now for an update. We've been following this in Florida. Terrible story where we have Governor DeSantis really ignoring the total lack of enforcement of Florida abortion law. It's very clear it's not being enforced. Looking at the numbers, looking at the evidence on the ground, the reports that we're getting from folks outside the killing centers, as well as actual reports. I've had reports sent to me. We had a show with Pam Stenzel. We went through it a little bit, had a caller call in. Bob, who was on the sidewalk in Fort Myers, did some digging and got some reports, and I believe it was 12 cases of abortions of children being murdered after 15 weeks. And this is well after the 6-week ban has been in effect. This information has been sent to the appropriate authorities, and I know that people have been alerting folks in DeSantis's camp, and they're being ignored. I reached out again to the Attorney General's office on this, even just asking the question, can I get somebody to talk to me and answer the question, who's in charge of enforcement? Whose job is it to make sure this law is enforced? And by the way, the enforcement mechanism is basically hoping that the abortionist is going to be honest and follow the rules here. So the enforcement mechanism is absurd. There's no accountability with the DeSantis administration, and I can't get anybody to even call me back and to talk to me and to give me an answer. I filled out their form that the bureaucrats over at the Attorney General's office wanted me to fill out. I did that 2 weeks ago. They said, oh, you'll hear something back real quick. Still haven't heard anything back. So this is what we're dealing with. But this is this week some news on relatedly, DeSantis is very passionate, very excited about his priority of enforcing immigration law. But it's very interesting. He wants very much to enforce one law, but doesn't care about enforcing the other. It shows where his priorities really lie. Here's just a little bit of a news report on this as he tried to call a special session and is basically getting pushback, being blocked by his own party on this. Here it is.
There's a battle brewing in Florida between Governor Ron DeSantis and the Republican-controlled legislature. They're at odds over a bill about a crackdown on illegal immigration, basically how to do it and who should be in control over it. Governor Ron DeSantis vowing to veto that bill, saying it's weak. It will transfer immigration power to a bureaucracy.
All right, so I think it's weak, Mr. Governor Ron DeSantis, leaving the enforcement mechanism on abortion law to the abortionist and not making this a priority for your administration to get this right and start enforcing the law when it comes to abortion. I think that's pretty weak. But one thing to remember about Governor DeSantis, this came to me. I was thinking about this. I was in Florida at the time. It's before I moved down here in 2020, a few months before I was down here when COVID started and we got stuck down here, my family and I remember this. He shut down so-called non-essential businesses in Florida for about 1 month in the early days of the COVID panic. And during that time, during the statewide stay-at-home order of April 2020, he kept Planned Parenthood and other abortion killing centers open, classifying them as essential. Governors in other states like Texas, Oklahoma, and Iowa did take action to restrict abortion killing centers at that time. Governor DeSantis did not. Why? I think his lack of action says much about what he really believes and what his priorities are. At the same time, I don't believe in giving up on anyone. He can change, but his current actions refusing to enforce Florida abortion law show me he hasn't changed, and it seems unlikely he will. I still think the pro-life leaders, the pro-life groups, and Florida voters who voted for him ought to be pushing him to do the right thing at a minimum, play defense by calling another special session specifically on passing a bill making it more difficult to amend the state constitution as pro-abortion forces are gathering to try that again. And that was supposed to be part of this special session regarding immigration law, but also push him to change the enforcement mechanism mechanism for Florida abortion law to actually be effective in enforcing the law and go on offense, calling for an executive order on personhood and put the burden on the Florida Supreme Court. Keep calling on him to do the right thing. Keep pushing him and hoping, praying that he will have a change of heart on this and his actions will change. Father, your thoughts?
Well, you're exactly right. The first eye-opener for me was in Florida, where DeSantis, I think, made just about every right decision during the COVID period, except for allowing the abortion industry to remain essential health care. And he actually took a lot of heat from quite a few of, I think, the better pro-life groups down here in Florida. But since then, these pro-life leaders have really become as much a political idolater as DeSantis, in my mind, and I think your mind, has always been. He has never been adamant about this issue. And again, we talked last week about the speech that he gave at the March for Life. If you really know the backstory, you know that everything he said was basically a lie. He made it sound as if he was taking the lead with the 15-week ban and the 6-week ban, where we know we basically had to drag him kicking and screaming. He actually had a change of mind and heart set and said he was going to have a special session right before, you remember, Jim, when we had the Men's March to abolish abortion in Tallahassee. He came out and told Andrew Shearwell and his people that they were going to have a special session looking at this issue, the abortion issue. That never happened. He is a political showman. He is a political idolater. He has never been adamant about this issue. He will say he is and make it sound like he is, but if you pull away the veil, like you and I and Pam did on your show, you see that absolutely, positively, there's no enforcing. And yes, he should be abolishing abortion. He should be looking at the Florida Constitution, the 14th Amendment. He has the supermajority in the House and Senate, 6-1 Supreme Court, and just saying, look, I am recognizing constitutional person from the moment of conception based on our Constitution, 14th Amendment. But talk about enforcement, and we brought this up last week. If he just got behind a microphone and said, we're calling on every pregnant woman in Florida who believes in life, is pro-life, to contact one of our health agencies because we need your help, all right, to start making sure these abortion facilities are adhering and abiding by the law. In other words, make it seem as if we're now going to start doing visitations. We're going to start making phone calls. That in and of itself would have a dramatic effect. But I believe that the word is spreading amongst the abortion industry, probably already has spread, that there's going to be no enforcement, and they are just doing what they need to do. They're not shipping people up. In the beginning, they were shipping people up to North Carolina and New York. I don't think they're doing that now. I think they're doing every abortion that they feel they can get away with, and until somebody calls them out and actually prosecutes them, takes their license away, it's going to continue. So basically, just as when we had the 15-week ban after the 24 weeks, we had the 15-week ban, abortions went up, right? And they continued to go up. And now there's been a minimal impact. Not one abortion mill is closed, minimal impact on the number of abortions. And it really does point to Governor DeSantis' passiveness and non-enforcement.
Yeah, and where are the pro-life leaders calling him out, calling him on in authentic love? I mean, look, the March for Life hosted him. They have nothing to say publicly, calling him on to enforce the Florida law. What about their state? Do they have a state march group in Florida? I mean, do they not care? What about all these other big groups? Live Action, Students for Life, the so-called public policy arm of the pro-life movement, Susan B. Anthony. They have nothing to say. Nobody's calling him out on this. What are we supposed to believe other than political idolatry? It's because he's a Republican governor and they want to be cozy with Republicans and they don't want to upset the apple cart for themselves themselves in any way? 40 days for life. Where are you? You've got folks on the ground throughout the state of Florida. They must be telling you what's going on. Sidewalk advocates for life. No, your leaders do not come out publicly and say anything calling DeSantis on. I don't understand it. Father, any other thought on it?
Yeah, and again, we have a leader, a meeting of, I think it's probably about 30, 35, 40 pro-life leaders in just south of here in Florida. And I have no knowledge of them talking about what's going on in Florida, the lack of enforcement. I'll know more tonight when I meet with my friend who was at the meeting. But again, why should we expect the pro-life leadership in North Dakota or Florida, or I should say the bishops in North Dakota or Florida, or the politicians why, when the mainstream corporate pro-life movement, the people who have accepted the mantle, they're supposed to be the tip of the spear to abolish abortion, many of them getting rich, organizations bringing in millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. And they're absolutely, as you pointed out, you went through a litany of quite a few groups, absolutely silent. And so why should anybody else, all right, if they are the ones who have accepted the mantle, we are going to be the light brigade. We're going to be at the head of the charge, right? We're going to be the tip of the spear when indeed they just suffer from the same thing. They're concerned about perception. It is political idolatry. And this is why abortion, in spite of Dobbs, is continuing. And again, remember, since Dobbs, and now this is all being revealed, abortions are not going down; they're going up. And I made the point on social media the other day. The situation we have in this country right now, where Trump is saying it's a states' rights issue, Vance is saying it's a states' rights issue, and there's no pushback against that. Slowly but surely, the pro-aborts, the abortion industry is picking off state by state by state. And based on what the pro-life movement's position is, that if they pick off every state in the country and turn it into a pro-abortion state, that's perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. In spite of the fact that God has given us the remedy and the solution through Catechism 2270 and the 14th Amendment, this is a scandal. It's just an unfathomable scandal.
It's terrible. And we're going to get to President Trump. He was at the National Prayer Breakfast, had some remarks yesterday. So we're going to get to those when we get back from the break. I don't think we have time to play the clip right now, but look, we're calling on President Trump to be the new Lincoln. That is to sign the executive order on personhood for the preborn, constitutional personhood for the preborn, affirming what it says in the 14th Amendment. We are going to continue to talk about this every single show. It's the moment that we are in, and this is what we need to do. Call on President Trump to be the new Lincoln. And I think it's important, we've talked about this, to appeal to him in that way. He wants a strong legacy. I know he likes President Lincoln and would love to have a legacy like that. And he's got an opportunity to do that. He could sign the executive order that forces the Supreme Court to have to deal with this. And I do believe they'd come out on the right side. There's a way he can do this that would be very, very good for him, as well as good for the nation and the children and the moms and all of us and the entire world, to abolish abortion under his leadership. So that's what we're calling for. And Father, I do think if any other scenario kind of rolls down, I think Trump is more likely to maybe oppose it, like we saw after the Alabama Supreme Court made the ruling that said in the IVF case that those embryos are children, and that's correct. What else would they be? But Trump opposed it because we've been through this. Senator Britt got all upset, and her friends were calling her. She calls Trump, and she basically convinces Trump how great IVF is, to the point where he now has called himself the father of IVF. So he kind of got thrown. He kind of fell into that direction with it. I am concerned something similar might happen if a Governor DeSantis were to sign an executive order. And look, I think everybody needs to push whatever it is, or Governor Abbott. If it comes from somebody else, I think he's less likely to probably accept it. If it comes from a lawsuit in North Dakota, I think, again, it might catch him more off guard. And again, he loses the point of it being his legacy. He's the new Lincoln. That's what can happen, though, if he signs it like Lincoln signed the executive order of the Emancipation Proclamation that got the ball rolling to abolish slavery. Trump can be the new Lincoln by doing a similar thing, abolishing abortion. We'll be right back.